Folks at home, welcome back to the Crimson Oak Pond, and today we're going to be stocking 5,000 of these jumbo shrimp, known as freshwater prawns, into our pond. We're also going to be installing a volcano pump that'll benefit all of the fish in the pond, as well as installing a new squirrel house in the big oak tree. So one of our most successful projects last year was building this prawn pond, and the reason we decided to add prawns into the 5-acre pond is because we can't add crawfish because they could burrow a hole through our clay liner. And as you can see, these jumbo prawns are a huge protein snack for the bass, and also another reason that the bass went from 2 inches to 5 pounds in about 18 months. So what you see here is the average size adult prawn that we grew, and it took about 5 months. And we would release some of them right here on the pond's edge, but a lot of them got put in at night and were an easy meal for the bass under the green lights. So it's time to restock the prawns this year. We have one slight problem. The prawn pond got a big upgrade and now looks like this. So this year we're going to be raising them in 3 different bodies of water. And our shipment just came in of 5,000 post-larva prawns. And you can see these are juveniles. And when they're first born, they're about 1/8 of an inch long, but we feed them a heavy protein diet and they'll reach adult size in only 4 months. So the first thing we're going to do is start out by putting them in a holding tank so we can control the temperature. The only difficulty with raising prawns is making sure their water temperature doesn't get too low, because they can't survive in anything below the mid-50s. So we're releasing the first batch in here, and just like last year, they immediately go to the side of the containers and start feeding on any type of algae that's in the tank. And now let's talk about the second body of water we're going to be adding the prawns to. If you guys recall, when we were building this pond, right at the top of the waterfalls, we dug out a wetland filter. Alright, beautiful afternoon out here with the sun setting. Now we're about to stock some prawns, and we're going to put some in the wetland filter and down there in the main pond. But the prawns down there may get eaten by the bluegills or bass. But the perfect thing about having this wetland filter is you got this nice little sanctuary, so this entire area has no predators in it. Plus it's a wetland filter, so it's full of nutrients. You can see algae down there on the bottom. Well, I have to take that last statement back. I said there wasn't any predators in there, but if you recall last week's video, the tiger bass spawned, and I made an attempt to catch some of those baby bass fry, and I was only successful in catching one of them. So this little guy now lives in the wetland filter that's going to get stocked full of prawns. He may grow at a record rate. And by the way, I asked you all to help me name him, and by far the most popular name was Truman. So congratulations, Richard, you are the winner. So we're at that time of year where we shouldn't have any more cold nights, so we're going to go ahead and put some right here in the wetland filter. And this top layer is only about 1.5 feet deep, but the gravel goes down 6 feet deep. So while these prawns are at the post-larva stage, they could get down there in that gravel and we couldn't see them for weeks or maybe even up to a month until they get big enough for their force to come out. And there's the perch right there that the eagle's been landing on. There's a cool shot of him hanging out. Alright, so now these guys have acclimated to the holding tank, which we filled with pond water out of Cedar Falls. So we're going to transport some of them into the wetland filter, and the prawns should thrive here. Fresh water, algae, and plenty of places to hide. Alright, there's 2 things the prawns need in their holding tank. One is warm water, so we got this thermometer set to about 80 degrees to offset any nighttime temperatures out here. The second thing they need is a lot of oxygen. So we're going to drop some of these pucks down to the bottom there. Now a second one. So I've been feeding these guys a heavy dose of protein pellets, and it is amazing to see how quickly they grow. Each day I come out here, they're noticeably bigger. Now it's time to move some to the 5-acre pond. Alright, we're in the shallow corner pocket of Bonnie's Bayou, and we're going to release some prawns right here in this area. You can see this is extremely shallow right here, and there's a lot of algae for the prawns to feed off of. You can see it's a perfect safe haven for all those fish that just hatched. And if there's any of you out there that want to stock prawns, but don't have a good setup like a holding tank or a prawn pond, the best thing to do is just overstock the shallow areas of your pond, especially the areas that have the vegetation. Because while most of them will get eaten up by the bluegills and other small fish, still roughly 10% of them are going to make it to that adult size. And if you stock enough numbers in the beginning, that 10% could be enough to have an impact on your bass. So now it's time to install the volcano pump into the pond, and there's several benefits to this that we're going to be talking about here in just a moment. But its basic job is to act as a huge aeration pump. It's 5.5 horsepower, but the other cool feature about this model is it has these big canister LED lights. So you can pretty much put on a light show at night. And we're using some 5-gallon buckets filled with cement as anchor points. And we've got 200 feet of power and lighting cable that are going to connect back to our control panel. And it floats, which is a good thing. We got the control box mounted, some conduit leading down into the water. And I had the guys from Southeastern Pond come out to help me install this. These guys are very knowledgeable and made it look like an easy job. So we wanted to get it out in at least that 6-foot depth range. So we chose right out to the left of Alcatraz Island, out in the center of the pond. And once the guys got everything anchored down, there's only one thing left to do, and that's power it on. And I'll have to say, guys, this video does not do it justice. The volume of water this thing moves is incredible. People install pond aerators or fountains for the aesthetics look, but the volcano style is completely opposite. It has one major job, and that's surface aeration. And a lot of people call surface aerators an insurance policy for your fish. So anytime you have a lot of vegetation, or in our case, plankton bloom from the fertilizer, and you get these real hot summer days, sometimes either a thunderstorm can trigger it by dumping a lot of cold rainwater in the pond, or even those very hot temperatures can cause that plankton bloom to die off rapidly. And when vegetation or plankton dies at a rapid rate, it depletes all of the dissolved oxygen, which can lead to a fish kill and you lose every fish in the pond. So for starters, this pump's going to prevent that. And the second benefit is that as we add more and more fish to the pond each spring when we have new spawns, and introduce more bluegill, small bass, and even tilapia, the increase in number of fish is going to require more dissolved oxygen, which this pump is going to provide more than they could ever need. But this aerator is going to improve the water quality and will also reduce algae growth, because by producing more oxygen in the water, it converts things like phosphorus, which algae typically uses for food. And not to mention, by churning up the water, a lot of those algae spores get pushed down deeper and die off because they don't have access to the sunlight. Another added benefit is a reduction in mosquitoes, because they require still, calm water for their eggs to develop. And it's also going to reduce the accumulation of bottom sediment. So the organic matter in the pond decomposes much slower under low oxygen conditions. So as you can see, by adding more dissolved oxygen, there are numerous benefits. And this system works great in conjunction with our diffusers. And we installed 3 diffusers just after we built the pond. And the diffuser is really good at destratifying a pond. So in a typical pond, there will be layers throughout the water column, and some of those will have little to no oxygen, and that leaves a big portion of your pond inaccessible to all the fish. So by pumping these bubbles in, it's going to remove those dead zone layers, which allows the pond to hold more fish, but most importantly, improves that water quality, so we've got happy, healthy bass. And last but not least, we had to check out the LED lights at night. The really cool thing about this is they have built-in color patterns for holidays throughout the year, so like red, white, and blue during 4th of July, green and red during Christmas. So now our fish are going to know what holiday it is they should be celebrating. Now today we're going to be working with a product called Sunday to help improve the lawn around our backyard pond as well as out at the farm. And we started the first application of the Sunday product about 6 weeks ago. And this is what our lawn looked like. It was in pretty good shape, but you could see there were a couple of bad spots. And this is a quick look at what the lawn looks like 6 weeks after applying the Sunday product. And just in case you didn't see that video, Sunday's products are extremely easy to use. You basically just hook them up to a water hose. There we go. It's got pretty good range on it. Sunday works as a subscription service, and you start out by using the tools they give you to take a soil sample of the backyard. And you send that off to their experts, and based on your soil and climate, they'll send you back the exact mix of fertilizer you need to keep your yard looking great throughout the year. So Sunday takes all the guesswork out of it and make it extremely easy to use with these pouches that attach to your water hose. So if you're interested in checking them out, head over to getsunday.com/BamaBass. And for a limited time, they're offering 30% off your first lawn care box by using code BamaBass30 at checkout. So Nate Makes has been building a squirrel house for the fox squirrel we call Foxy, and we put out a few feeder stations to see which area had the most squirrel activity, and that turned out to be highly entertaining in itself, because as always, you never know what you're going to get with the wildlife. We saw flying squirrels, George Jones the possum, and even clever raccoons figuring out ways to open the feeding stations and access the peanuts. Alright, out of all the squirrel feeder stations we put out, the nut bar did the best. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's in this giant oak tree. A lot of animals living and using this tree each day. So So we're probably gonna mount the squirrel house right here on this big branch. But the tough part is figuring out how to get power and Ethernet down here to this location, because we're literally 1,500 feet away from the closest power source. But I'm always up for a challenge. So let me just show you guys this cool little package here by Dakota Lithium called the Power Box. I call it the juice box. There's a lot of these type deals out on the market, but this one is by far the best. Trust me, I've tried a bunch of them. So to start off with, it has a lithium battery. This one is the 135 amp hour, which will give you juice for quite a while. Well, the best part about this is they've made a waterproof device that has a multifunction inverter built into it. But not only that, it has built-in storage for things like this switch. I can mount it right there. The 120 volt plugs are right there. Everything gets stored away nicely. So I like this product so much. I'm even gonna put a link down in the video description so you can check it out. Now the second part of this deal is getting the Wi-Fi signal down here. So we're gonna mount this up high in the tree, and it's gonna send the video signal from the squirrel box camera 1,500 feet away to the cabin without any data loss. We're even gonna be able to live stream it. So time to get everything set up and installed. All right, Nate, out here delivering the squirrel house. What we got, Nate?
We got the beautiful mahogany front door set, wood floor inside. Come around back. You got waterproof hinges up top, where you can open her up.
Let's see the inside of the squirrel house.
Got the full housing suite in there. Got the kitchen. Got the living room with the TV over here. Got the bedroom set down here.
Got the squirrel bed right there. Even built in a camera so all you guys can watch. Candle on the table. So the first thing we had to do was set the table with some almonds and a variety of nuts to hopefully lure the squirrels into their new home. We also put some bonus items in the refrigerator. It's going to be interesting to see if they can figure out how to open it. And Nate was even thoughtful enough to build them their own front lawn. He's got little hidden gems everywhere. You can see they even have a fireplace.
I like the front lawn, dude. Nice, good cut.
Yeah, I wonder who's going to get up here and cut the grass. So a big shout out to Nate Makes. An incredible job. The animals are always happy when you show up. And we may have had to do one or two sketchy things that wouldn't be approved by OSHA. But hey, if we're ever going to live stream all these cameras, these things are necessary. So one last look at the inside of the house. Unfortunately, we installed this so late in the week. You're going to have to wait until the next episode to see the squirrels enter their new home. So now let's go check in on our little buddies in Cedar Falls. And I'll have to say I'm starting to love the bass we call Johnny and June and the bluegills. There's something special about having fish that aren't scared of people. And now every time I come up to the pond, they swim over and greet me. And a lot of this began when we started feeding the bluegills the protein pellets. But the bass started enjoying us coming by for a different reason. So this pond was built with shallow shelves so that the bait fish like the golden shiners we stock in here have a way to hide and get away from the bass. Well, every time we walk up, we scare those shiners out of the shallow pockets, and that's when Johnny and June get aggressive. So pretty much every time we come up to the pond, the fish get a full belly. So now they look forward to us stopping by. And it's that time of year where all the lilies are blooming, which also means that it's toad time. So if you're around any body of water this time of year, there's a very good chance you're going to hear that mating call from the frogs and toads. And this is nothing new to us. We've been seeing it the past few years in the backyard pond. So when you hear these little guys around the edge of the pond, if you look closely, you'll start seeing these strings of eggs. And then when you come back a couple days later, those eggs become tadpoles. And you may see thousands of them, but they're very beneficial because those tadpoles eat the algae off the rocks and basically help give your pond a good cleaning. And once they fatten up, they also become an easy meal for the bluegills. But there's one guy out there that's not too happy with the invasion of the toads, and that's Moby. He said, not in my house. So next week, I promise we're going to give you a full update on the backyard pond and Moby. They're all doing great and have gained a lot of weight over the winter. So now let's check in on the two bald eagles. They are official residents. We see them out here every day, usually stopping down to snag a fish early in the morning. Or as you can see here, scooping up the tiny fish on the edge of the banks. But there's one thing you're for sure to see every day when the eagles are around, and that's the angry crows. They are sworn enemies, and the crows make sure to let the eagles know it. But I did see something interesting. I was watching a group of crows run the eagle off, but I'm pretty sure one of those wasn't a crow, maybe a small hawk or something, that swooped down and tapped him. We also had a special guest appearance from one of their babies, the juvenile bald eagle. We hadn't seen him in about a month, so it's always nice when he stops by. But check this out, guys. Look what I saw floating on the side of the pond. I believe this is that mystery fish that we started seeing right after I stocked the pond with bass. He was floating because he choked on another fish. But that's interesting to see. I wonder how many of these guys are in here. Alrighty, fish feeding time. We got some live golden shiners. I got about a dozen or so pet bass that hang out right out here in front of the dock. So I've been working on hand feeding the bass, and I'm starting to get very, very close. There's a couple of them that'll come right up to my hand, and I just know the first one that explodes on it like Moby used to, I'm probably going to drop the camera in the water. But so far, I can get to within just a couple inches of them, but I can't make them commit. But I'm determined to make it happen. So while we watch a feeding clip, I want to talk to you about the antennas. If you look on the right, you can partially see one of the antennas that we're using to track the fish. So one of the big reasons for installing the antennas is to gather a bunch of data and hopefully learn something about bass that we didn't already know. So I asked you all to give me some ideas on what type of things we should track with the data, and there were several comments, but one of the comments I liked the most was about tracking the data to see which time of day the fish were most active. And that type of data could really help out fishermen knowing what time of day the fish are actively feeding throughout the seasons of the year. Because one thing I noticed last year was that the bass would feed pretty heavily at nighttime in the summer. You could hear them out there on the dock feeding at night around the pond. So we don't have a ton of data yet, but if you just look back over the past 2 weeks, we have some pretty interesting data. So let's start with the green light antenna on the left. So this graph makes perfect sense. A lot of the bass congregate around the green light at night because that's where I feed them, and you can see that most of the bass activity was between 4 and 7 p.m. But that data could be a little bit biased because I'm out there feeding them. So the oak throne is probably a lot more like what you would see out in other ponds and lakes, and I found a couple things very interesting. So most of the fish appearances occurred between 18 and 20, which again is right there at dark and is pretty common. So I wasn't very surprised, but what I was surprised about was there being almost zero activity early in the morning right at daylight. So typically that could be one of your best fishing times, but as you can see for this 2-week period, the fish were not active at all in this particular area. And we also did one more graph just to see which fish were the most active in each area. So Jaws, Odin, and Excalibur hang out around the green light, and Xavier, Dixie, and Unit probably live near the oak throne. But we're going to keep analyzing the data. Leave a comment below if you'd like to see any particular graph. And check that out. Got the green volcano matching the underwater green lights perfectly. And you know, here in the South, it is officially crawfish season. And this is our 10th annual crawfish cooking, and I'll typically cook for around 70 to 100 people, so it's going to get hectic with 5 burners going at the same time. We got the crawfish tables laid out over here, and you know if Nate Makes is around, the tables are going to have that engraved Seacon logo. So we start out by purging them and just running a bunch of water through them, but the key to a successful crawfish boil is you have to pardon one of the crawfish and release him back into the wild. And by far the best crawfish seasoning you'll ever taste is a combination between these two, which are Swamp Fire and the Louisiana seasoning. The Swamp Fire adds the spice, the Louisiana is the salt, and we got the Cajun butter for the potatoes and sausage. But trust me folks, you cannot go wrong with this recipe. If you try it one time, you'll probably never try anything else. And if you're interested in our exact recipe and how long to cook the crawfish, potatoes, sausage, corn, you can go check out some of our old videos where we have everything detailed and listed out. So pretty much everywhere in the country's been experiencing some crazy weather, but thankfully all of ours has been flooding and not tornadoes. But as you can see, the eagles are doing their best to weather the storm up in the Eagle Tower, but eventually it's just too much. And here's one thing you never like to see, because every time we get those flood-like rains, Cedar Falls goes from crystal clear to muddy water. But if you look closely at all that water that's flowing back there behind the wetland filter down into the drain, that'll give you an idea of exactly how much water flow we had, because at one point the entire drain filled up and started overflowing, and that's got a 36-inch pipe that diverts it down into the 5-acre pond. So that was a massive amount of water flowing through that ditch, and it's also a major reason we put that drain in there, because had we not, that volume of water could have done a lot of damage to Cedar Falls. And we got a visit from one of our favorite farm animals, the owl that we call Hooter. And Hooter's been doing a little hunting tonight, and I tried and tried to see what type of animal this was that he captured and brought up to the Eagle Tower. At first I thought it was a baby rabbit, but the feet didn't really match up, so I'm not 100% sure what this is. But that's another reason we built the squirrel house, to give Foxy a little bit higher chances of survival. So this is a first for me. A rainbow trout jumped in the shallow part of the pond and spooked the blue heron. Doesn't look like he's having much luck today. And look at this little friendly guy I found in the driveway. This little guy's making his rounds. And we also had a new duck show up, and I was a little surprised because once the eagles pretty much moved in, all the ducks left. But you can see this guy's relaxed and not a worry in the world, taking him a nice nap out here in the pond. So one of my subscribers reached out last week and said, "Did you know you had an invasive grass out there at the farm?" And this particular grass is known as Kogon grass, or Jap grass, and is extremely invasive down here in the south. And you can see these little cotton-like tops are how they spread the seeds. And I did some research. It is extremely hard to kill and usually requires several applications of Roundup, but I'm worried about doing that near the pond. So if any of you guys have experience of getting rid of this grass, or if you know of a safe chemical to spray around ponds, let me know. Alright, time to go catch some fish, see how big they've gotten. There's a little bit of algae in the pond, so we're going to try out the frog today. Got him. Nice one. Putting up a good fight. It's tough to beat that. It's one healthy fish. Chunky. Alright, this fish has been caught before, 5'6", 9587, and it weighs 2.27 pounds. And this fish is named Lily, and Lily got the award for the most aggressive fish last spring because I caught her, released her, and then caught her again 15 minutes later. Oh no, get out of there. He got me in the treetop I put out. Not a giant. Good fight though. There we go. Alright, this fish has not been caught. His tag's going to be 2232598. And he weighs 1.78 pounds. Got him. Where are you running to? There we go. Alright, this fish has been caught. 5'6", 9705. And he weighs 1.65. And this fish is named Turbo, putting on some weight a little at a time. And now it's time to feed Mr. Tiger, and this may be the last time you see us feeding him, because I'm pretty sure we're about to move him out to the farm. So my question to you all is, should we put him in the 5-acre pond and potentially never see him again, kind of like Bonnie and Clyde? Or should we put him in Cedar Falls and get to keep a close eye on him? Let me know what you all think, because we're going to be moving him out this week. Alright folks, that's going to wrap up this video. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to keep up with these ponds and aggressive bass, prawns, and even get to see who shows up in the squirrel house. But I hope y'all enjoyed this one, and we will see you all next time.